we're doing the police tonight. We want to give Kenny, or do you want to start off? Want to start off?
Okay, just quickly, you have volume B as far as your packets, a lot more populated. We're getting closer to starting to see the bottom line, and the police department's numbers have been put in. Those numbers include overtime considerations. Okay, so again, I'll need from the board, I would say by our next meeting officially, whether we're going to factor overtime in or throw it into contingency and have it handled, metered out by department head slash liaison. The other thing that's not there right now is your fire department, which we'll get numbers for on Wednesday. We do have to still review insurance. Our insurance agent will be in on the 6th to give us a reasonable estimate of where our insurance numbers are going to be. We have some salary things to adjust. Largely the DPW. I'm going to need to meet with probably Kevin, and who's the liaison for DPW? Mayor? Because we're gonna have to break out the salaries by responsibility level, and I don't know the scheme that was used before. I have no problem using that scheme, I just need to know how the percentages were broken out, because it's a little bit of a math problem right now. So that's gonna need to be worked out. There's one bond issue that I'm trying to decipher the interest, because the interest doesn't match the payment schedule, the debt payment schedule, and I don't know if there was some follow-on paperwork that's just not in the file or what, so I'll get the answer to that, and a couple other incidentals. But right now, when you look at the total, the breakout, last year, our total for first page, was 6,456,889, so $6,457,000 was the total. Right now, our totalizer is about 6,000 below that prior to the fire department. So you're already seeing that we're north of $200,000 of where we were last year. Again, there's a lot of conservative numbers built into this budget, okay? The only thing that's not conservative is the salary, okay? Because the salaries have been largely kept to their baseline salaries, and then the contingencies have been pushed up to match up with some overtime expectations. I'm factoring in a 50% reduction in overtime use next year. So you have factored in $225,000 last year. You've got about a little over $100,000 factored in for overtime for all three departments, not including your snow fund.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, not including snow. As I mentioned earlier, the snow fund's been exhausted. We're tracking, I probably think, ahead of a lot of communities who probably budgeted less for snow. But that's going to be a factor we have to big time consider. And we have $50,000 for the senior center with the idea of the matching funds program. Again, these are all things, these are wish list things. When we get to brass tacks, we'll have to determine what we're going to do. Youth programs, we moved $3,500 from there to seniors to try to be equitable there with that money. So there's a lot of machinations that are in the budget. I think they're pretty clear, but if you do have any questions, please let me know. I'll be glad to put that out. All the police department information's been put in here. And obviously Chief Scott's going to discuss his particulars on the individual line items. And that's it. Chief Scott.
Okay, what do you guys want to start at the top? So with the police?
No, start with Central Communications.
I don't have that sheet up. I'll cheat out the yours.
Do you want to start with the regular police department?
No, I can use the sheet. Okay, so on this budget, we have 3 full-time dispatchers. As you can see on
Well, Ed, you got a different sheet than everyone else does.
It's in the folder that Bob's got, he's looking at it right now.
All three of our full-time dispatchers are at top salary right now, so that's the salary that's reflected here. Now, not knowing what the collective bargaining agreement's gonna be, I throw in a conservative number, I throw in 2%, that's, you know, if it's 3%, then
That's
I'm a little.
good, 2%,
So 2% is a good happy medium, so if you look to the right of that, you'll see what their salary would be for the year, you factor in their collective bargaining longevity amounts, and then to the far right, you would get what their total would be for the year. And then when you add it all up, you come up with that first figure. In accordance with the collective bargaining agreement, there's also stipends. There's a stipend for the head dispatcher, and that's at $2.15 an hour. I don't know what, if any changes were gonna be made to that, so that was left alone. And to the right, you see a figure there, $4,472. And then for the full-time night dispatcher, the midnight dispatcher, there, according to the collective bargaining agreement, there's a night differential. So that's factored in there. When you total all that up, you get that first figure of $153,479 just for salary.
Right, hold on one second, for the increase, 2%, we're taking that out, right, Ed? Putting that in a
I
separate
need-
fund?
Yeah, if that's what the board wants to do consistently, that's what I'll do.
That's what we wanna do, correct? Before I move on, just so I know.
Okay.
This
so
way we
As long as
see
we're
the,
making accommodations for it.
What-
you know.
what we
Either
have to do is make
contingency
sure
or
we
we'll have a
pull it out.
separate, we'll
Where we
have
end
a
up where we are
separate
now with-
overtime line.
with,
It's gonna be earmarked
exactly,
for,
because what's happened is it's just being
I'm
spent.
gonna determine whether or not there's actually a code that I can use for separate overtime line. If not, it's gonna go into the contingency, and what's gonna have to happen there is the board's gonna physically
Right.
have to transfer money from the contingency to the salary line of the individual department, so that consciously you're knowing that, let's say,
That's
March
that money. Yep,
timeframe,
okay.
you're now having to move money over.
Right,
What it will, if we don't have a separate overtime line, it will behoove the board to do a 6-month review. And what I mean, and I'll keep you posted on that. That 6-month review will basically be salary divided by 2, how much have we spent to where we would be at plan, okay? Obviously, there's some variation to policing, you know, the summer months require a little bit more, I guess. Is that fair, Chief Scott? Summer months require a little more manpower than winter months, or there's
Yeah.
really no variability?
In some areas, and we'll cover that when we get on the police side of the house.
Okay, I'm just, so you'll use a scenario where at the 6-month point, we'll see what the salaries are, and we'll know how we're tracking. Are we ahead of plan, below plan? And then the board will determine transfer amounts and so on.
good. Okay, then I'm sorry, continue.
Okay, and when you get below that, and then you got the vacation, holiday, sick days, these are all collective bargaining agreement things, so what I did is I took the amounts that each full-time employee has, and this is worst case scenario, if they took all their days off and we covered it with an average part-time rate, it would be $111 a day, so just taking those figures, if you move to the right, that's how much we would spend just to cover those shifts. So if you wanna do the same thing, if you wanna move all that,
No, when you're dealing with vacations and so on, that's normal customary, so that's expected. It's more of when you're having to put on extra manpower, that's really the
Okay.
overtime.
so this is just covering days off. And then you move below that, now, with only 3 full-time dispatchers, that is gonna leave you a vacancy on your duty roster. So what I did is that amounted to 312 shifts. I took the average part-time salary, which is $111, and times that out, and I gave you that big figure there. So when you see that figure, that's where we got that number from.
So that's for all your part-timers,
Yes. That's using part-timers to cover those vacancies.
the weekend.
Yep. Wherever these guys don't fill those voids. Training hours, we allot for 80 hours, and that's disseminated through all the dispatchers. We try to get them to as much training as possible. Something that we weren't accounting for in the past is when we hire new dispatchers. We have a high turnover of part-time employees. So when we bring them in, there's hours that have to be spent training them. So for 4 new hires, if that's what in the course of the year, if we hired them at this rate, $13.88 an hour, we allotted 640 hours. Now, that could be a little low, it might be a little high, I just don't know, because One year, we could have 3 dispatchers come in, part-timers. We might have 5 come in. Sometimes we bring part-time dispatchers in to train, and they don't work out, so you cut your losses and they're gone, you bring in another one. So this might be a conservative number, but it's something. We've never had it budgeted in before.
160 hours per dispatcher?
What's that?
Is that, am I reading that right, 160 hours?
640, and you gotta divide that by 4.
Right. Which is 160, I think.
You did the math on that?
It's 160.
So you're saying it's 160 hours to train one dispatcher?
Yeah, and that's the minimum standards for police officers, so that's where I got that number as a guidance.
It's about a month, right?
Roughly, yeah, 4 weeks.
If they're working part-time, but if they're working full-time, yeah. Yeah, I think just my recommendation is that if the board's plan is that they want that part-time list filled so that those people are available to cut back on the overtime that's happening with full-timers, then you're gonna need to at least have the training dollars to support that effort.
And like I said, we just never had it factored in before,
Right.
so,
So what's the difference of the two? This is training for,
for the current dispatchers.
okay, the additional training,
Yes.
okay.
And then overtime, the beauty of law enforcement or police departments is we can't project a lot of things. Whether it's disasters, we just can't project it. So in the past, what we've been doing, it's been stepping up a little bit each year. It might be too conservative of a number, to some it might be too much, but that's where that 5,500 on the overtime, that's just, I can't get a part-timer to cover it, a full-timer had to hold over, or I had 2 full-timers in there for whatever reasons, it's just the unexpected.
Okay, now, one thing, Kenny, with that, Mayor, if I might interject, we were tracking, and I want to pull information so that I'm talking math here. Our overtime for our dispatchers last year, because you're saying 5,500 hours in its entirety, that's for the whole year?
That's dollars, man.
That's
5,000.
dollars for the whole year? Okay, my instinct here is that if that's your number, that's a great number, but let me just cross-check something to make sure that I'm not missing something here. Okay, all right, the overtime for the whole department annual is $30,000. Okay, so you feel that you'll be able to do the same, because of this part-time force and everything, you'll be able to cut your overtime $25,000?
All these numbers that are projected in here, it's not guaranteed that a part-timer is gonna cover. Some of that might be going to a full-timer, which will throw these daily averages off. So this total here with the 5,500, that'll get you around that figure you just gave.
Oh, the training, you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry, minus the training.
He's saying with vacation, holidays, and sick.
Yes.
He's saying that these numbers are the hours that are gonna cost us when people take vacation
Yeah.
and sick and everything.
Yeah.
So he's saying that add the 7, the 3, and the 3, and the 5.
Gets us right in around that.
So you're looking at about 18,
Minus the
19,
training,
20,
right?
right, minus the training.
Okay, so when you add all those in, then you're expecting that your overtime number will go down about 7,000?
We would hope so,
Okay, that's your goal?
yes.
With the part-timers and, okay, all right.
Well, his goal, I think, is 9,000. That's what I'm told at.
Okay, all right, well, no, that's understandable, all right, so you're looking to trim your overtime by about $7,000-8,000 from this year. Okay, that's clear to me. Okay.
But that's not what we budgeted last year.
No, last year,
Was-
according to the numbers, I believe overtime was factored into last year's number.
But it only at about 5,500.
Yeah, I think it was just a little bit under that. But that's a separate line. Charlie, you gotta, we're adding in the vacation day, the holidays, sick days.
Those aren't broken out on that, correct? Or they are broken
No.
out on that, not on the main number. This is what he's saying.
Sick day, vacation,
Ed's
holiday,
number, right,
personal.
Ed's number is just total overtime, where here it's broken out to vacation, holiday, sick. covering those days.
backing.
And the overtime that isn't accounted for in vacation, holiday, sick.
Plus
And
this is
personal
also
days.
factoring in your 2%.
Right.
Okay.
What was the training dollar number?
There were two. The first training number that was for people that are already here for additional training was,
1,110,
and the second?
and the second was 8,883.
That was-
And like I said, without having it in the budget before, that might be too conservative, it might be just a little much, I'm not sure.
The good thing is
It's
you're,
unpredictable.
what I'm seeing is that we're breaking it out more, which is important, that this is a better breakdown, and we need to, even though this is actually similar to the worksheet last year, this is at least broken down more so we can see where the costs are coming from.
Well, again, also, you're not factoring that it's last year plus 10%. There's actually some justification behind some of the expenditures, so, I think that that's good. But your net is still, if you add the 2%, you're looking at $4,000, so your net is approximately $10,000 north of what it was last year.
And that's it on the salary part of it. And next we got contractual. Uniform allowance, that's set by the collective bargaining agreement. Those are the most recent numbers I have, I don't know where it's moving to, but I can only work with what I knew. So that was 1,912. Uniform replacement, small jump in that. This year it's 864, I don't have last year's figures in front of me.
786.
786. Well, anything that I didn't have a hard number, I gave it a rough 10% increase. So at least if things did go up, we had accountability for it. The phone cost, there was no change. Dick, the phone, Charlie, what figures do you have on your sheet there?
4,290
So that was another
last
no
year.
change. I have no indication from that company that those rates are going up, so we'll keep it at that. We have a very old system. They tried to get us to upgrade it for a phenomenal fee, so I elected to stay with the old system, and I was told by one of the techs that it's still a very solid and stable system, and that they can still do maintenance on it, so we're not gonna make any changes to that this year.
What's the benefit of making the changes and upgrading it?
You'll have the state-of-the-art equipment.
The dictaphone meaning,
That's our record system for all the phone calls and radio communications.
okay.
Which those are good candidates for grant money. So, when you do an upgrade, it would be, if you can get the grant,
That's
like
easy
you've been
money.
doing.
Let's
Entergy.
let's start that up and see if we can't get you that'd be a priority this year for grants, the dictaphone.
And I said, I talked to the techs, and they said it's still a solid system. so-
Oh, I know, but if we
Just to get, so
Right.
this year, that's
Oh,
what I didn't
no,
budget
I'm
for,
just
so.
saying, let's start looking at the grants now.
Mhm.
We'll budget for that, but let's go after the grants now so that we might be able to have it for next year. And that way we'll be spending less, hopefully, but maybe not.
Charlie, are you the only one with one of those cheat sheets there, or?
I'm just supplying
last year's.
current numbers on last year's sheet.
So office supplies, you might see a small jump there. Same with the copy lease, Charlie, if you would, the copy lease
Copy
on last
lease
year's.
is the same, 1210.
There was something that there's just no movement on it, so I'm not gonna put an increase where there's no need to.
Now, the office supplies and whatnot, have we ever tried to consolidate that? So between,
Well, the problem you're running into, even though it's all A fund, it's different operations, and you kinda wanna keep a handle of where money's going for that kind of stuff. If we put it all into the A fund, it still goes through Sue, and the purchasing still handles, you get a lot of support from Sue with your purchasing, right? You do not?
She'll give us discounted, I mean, she'll look for prices,
Yeah.
best prices for us, but she doesn't do any of the ordering.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm saying you're getting the economies of scale, meaning that she's able to find you the
Oh, yeah.
pricing, and if
Yes,
she can
yes.
marry an order together with the current order to get no shipping charge or
She's good,
whatever.
'cause sometimes she'll find something, she goes, we can get that a little cheaper here.
Yeah, so that's the benefit you'll get, but you still should itemize those expenses between departments.
No, I wanna do that, I'm saying like, have we in the purchasing area, look to get, look to go, are these guys operating independently? Or all as one unit as far as even the phone and cable and things like that? Are we bargaining with each department and just getting what they give us? Or are we saying, we have 5 departments using your service, we want better rates? They can still go in the individual departments.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I won't say exclusively, but I think for the most part, you're getting that economies of scale. For like your Verizon and, the cable, all the fiber optic stuff is, the computer Firth Cliff, it just gets charged out to the departments that are getting the benefit. Firth Cliff being the computer
Right.
consultant. So you are getting there. Can there be better? Sure, but look, the board's gonna have to update the purchasing policy. Okay, purchasing policy is from 1996. All right, so these are the types of things that the board can do during a year to update that and then maybe get a little bit more of a centralized purchasing.
That's what
But, it has to be examined in much more of a microscope. I think for the most part, it works okay, it's not bad, but, yeah, there's more efficient ways
Right.
to do it, but.
And I understand it's not the time, we've gotta do what we have to do now, but that's something that I definitely, immediately after this, when we slow down a little bit, I'd like to start looking into that for.
Yeah, well, you first start out with the purchasing policy, and one of the things there is you don't have to reinvent the wheel with that. We can grab a purchasing policy from the county, we can grab one from,
Right.
I think the towns is relatively recent, and then just kind of piggyback off of that. At a minimum, I'd ask the board at least change the darn date, so that when I give it to our auditors, it's current.
Done.
Okay?
All right, okay.
The copier lease, small increase. Impact. Now, they went up just a little bit, so that's why there's an increase there. 2,662, and that includes our records management system, the maintenance of it, and they're very good, so we're getting a good deal there. Computer repair, and that's gonna be something that we'll discuss when we get to the police side of the house on contractual equipment. Computer repair, that cost, with our old equipment now, the cost has gone up on our end, so I just had a problem over the weekend where a switch box that we just replaced, and I gotta see if it's on warranty. It just seems like we're starting to run into more problems, and we talked about this when we had Firth Cliff here last year. So the computer repair cost went up just slightly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, what did you have for last year? 18?
1320.
Oh, 1320, so that was the big jump. Radio lease,
Same.
that didn't change. Janitorial might have been a slight increase, and then same with the miscellaneous, which gave us a total of 22,134, which was just slightly above what we had last year. I believe we were around 20,000.
2848.
Last year was 28.
No, 28.
Oh, 20, okay, yeah. The only other thing that communications has for equipment would be 2 chairs we factor in, so not to exceed $440. And like I explained to the board last year, that is like their main piece of equipment that they use. That's why we do go through them, and every year I do budget for new chairs.
But did we not buy 2 new chairs this year?
That was under the current budget, yes. So next year, we'll be needing 2 more chairs. And what we do is when these chairs that the dispatchers use, once they rotate them out, they're still serviceable. We do kick them to the patrol, so we have them in this police station so that officers can use them. But most of the time, we're just throwing them out because they're just so beat. They're sat in 8 hours a shift for 24 hours a day. They're constantly used. So that's all I have with communications.
Okay, police department? Before I move on to police, any questions on the communications?
The only thing I'm just gonna point out is that your communications expenditures are up 16,000. So just something.
On the salaries, or?
Yeah, oh, well, total. Now, I have to do a year-to-date expenditures right now, which I could, go in KVS and find out, but I will also note that, that the police chief has really done a very good job on the overtime side, and, there definitely is, the salary spread is improved over the last couple weeks dramatically with the police department and the dispatchers. So I'm expecting that this 226 will be somewhat below that number at the end of the day when we get to May 31st. So that's, credit to the chief for taking charge of that based on the board's guidance. But again, that's just something to just consider when we get to the, I don't want to say the cut period, but the period where we really have to start looking on where we're gonna find certain funds to keep ourselves under the 2% cap.
Exactly. Okay. Police department.
Going to the police. Same thing with the increases, the 2% was factored in. Now that's just so we had an idea of where we're gonna possibly be if and when an agreement is made with the PDA. So whatever that, I didn't total it up, but whatever that amounted to, if that's what you guys are gonna move aside to contingency fund, that'll give you that figure. So all I did is I just took what the rates were, that increase was included in there, and then by contract, everyone's longevity, and that's where you get the end number here for each officer. And you get a total, which was $684,077. I don't, and I apologize, I don't have last year's figures here.
Yeah, it's not gonna break it
It's
out
not
on
gonna,
this.
it's not gonna break it down like that. I think it's possible that number just might be slightly down, but you're gonna see where it's gonna get caught up to last year's numbers. As we move down and went into the night differential, that's all by collective bargaining agreement, came up to $4,784. Now, that's possible, now I factor that in with 2 officers. Right now, currently, we have 1. So if we don't move another one in there, there might be a little extra there. Sergeant's pay, just as I did in the last 2 years, I did set aside money to cover that, if that position is ever filled. One of the biggest adjustments I had to make on the budget was with one of our full-time officers that's out on 207C right now. In the past, we were not factoring in all that we should have factored in. And what I mean by that is, when that officer came off the road, we needed to factor in how many shifts do we need to cover. And it didn't matter whether you plugged in part-time numbers or full-time numbers, we didn't account for nothing. What I had realized on my very first budget that I did is there was a vacant full-time slot in the amount of $41,000. I seen that as, well, there you go, that's the money that we'll use to cover his shifts. What I failed to realize was, and I noticed it after last year's budget, after it was already approved, is that full-time slot that was used, I never accounted filling those shifts. So, to cover his shifts, to cover that officer's shifts, you do get roughly, counting that officer's shift and then the vacant shift, slot, it amounted to 3,328 hours. Now I took the highest part-time rate to give us a figure, and that rate was $24.99 an hour. So if we were able to fill both those slots, the guy that's out and then the vacant slot that we never filled, it came up to $83,000. $83,167. Now that could explain why some of our budget numbers for salary were a little low. Now, I know last year when the budget was approved, for whatever reasons, there was $23,000 that was removed out of the salary line, which that's what made me open my eyes and go, wow, we just cut $23,000 after I thought we made a good move to cover open shifts. Well, then that's when I realized that, well, besides the officer that was out, we still needed to account for the full-time slot that was never filled. Now, this full-time slot has been vacant for, I wanna say, 4 years, maybe even 5. So, and it used to read down, when I used to do up this sheet, and even the chief prior to me, there used to be a slot right under the last officer that just said vacant. And then it had a number plugged in. So that was just removed. So that's the big change right there, because it's, I'm sure you see it, it's a big number, it's $83,167, but that's what we need to
So it's
factor in.
2 shifts, it's Fernandez and the vacant shift getting filled.
Yeah, and the reason why it's, a full-time officer works 2,080 hours a year, but with the way our scheduling is done, you put 3 officers, full-time officers, you assign them to the same shift, and that gives you full coverage for the year. Unfortunately, once a week, there's gonna be 3 officers on, there's no way you can get around that. So, with the vacant slot, you didn't have to account for 2,080 hours, because there's that one overlapping day. So it reduced the number significantly when you factored in both officers. So instead of 4,000 and change, it's 3,000 hours and change.
So what you're saying is we should get rid of some more full-timers and have more part-timers, is that what you're telling me?
I'm not gonna comment on that right now,
So-
because it's a
so-
big headache and it's gonna be worse.
So, right now, we have an issue, we have Officer X, who essentially is handling a shift, okay? Now, is he out on 207C, or is he on,
Light
light
duty.
duty?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
it's light duty.
Okay, so we have somebody on light duty that I understand there's analysis as to what degree this light duty is able to be functional, okay? You're absolutely correct, you gotta factor in the pay, okay? And that 83, you're not including benefits in that, right? That's just a raw salary? Are you
No, I don't
factoring
factor
in
in the
benefits?
benefits,
Okay, so you're looking at $100,000 minimum right there.
I'm just giving you salary. numbers.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
work hours.
Work hours. So, so that $100,000 is material on $1 million budget, it's 10%, right there, that's at least a year's worth of increases. So, I think that what the chief probably needs is some guidance as to the probabilities, if we know it yet, of that officer having some functionality in the next fiscal year, to alleviate this gap, because the shifts have to be filled, because this is a position that's covering a certain part of the duty day. So I think it's a tough one as far as the probabilities of this officer being reintroduced in some capacity to the shift, or if there's somebody else that's gonna fill that role. And I guess we're still awaiting information, right?
Brian is, yes, I spoke to him a couple, when was that, last week?
Yeah.
I think Thursday or Friday, and I spoke to him again today, not on this matter, but on this matter, we're, yes, he's handling it.
Okay, so, then I guess it's a matter of, the board needs to give guidance, not today, but give guidance to the chief as to the reasonability of whether or not we have to have that 100,000 factored in, or half of that, or some portion of that. It's kind of an important, it's a pretty dramatic situation, because if you factor in, okay, let's budget 50% of the outlay because our anticipation is this will be resolved in 6 months, that might be the prudent way to do it. But,
What happens if it don't work out?
well, if it doesn't work out, then you'll be relying on your contingency fund to take care of it. But on the other hand, I think that from everything that my understanding is that I think it's more probable than not that there will be some resolution this year, one way or another.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, in some internal discussions, it just seems to me that this is hitting the outside of what we call standard deviations. This is like 3 standard deviations from the mean. And that chances of that continuing that long is 3%, right? So without getting into the math of this is like an outlier. It's getting to a point where it's so unusual that we might be one of the only communities in the state that has something this long, okay?
Unfortunately not.
Okay, well, in some of my conversations with some people that are kind of involved in this, they kind of were surprised how long this has been going, but it's a different discussion. So we need the budget information as to what the board
Right.
feels is,
Yeah, and I figure I gotta give you, you know, when I was looking at it, you gotta factor it in regardless, so, and like I said, you know, looking outward, hopefully the outcome is that we won't need it all, but
Yeah.
right
we
now,
got-
you gotta
yeah,
account
yeah,
for it.
Absolutely.
But this
So-
individual is not able to do a dispatch shift on his own,
If it's during his shift, yes.
but it has to be done during his prescribed shift.
And that's what he's doing now, we utilize him as much as we can on the,
What, because
Of the
seniority issue?
yeah.
does the officer have more seniority than the dispatcher? Than
Yeah.
all of the
Well, yes,
dispatchers?
yes, they do, but they're two totally different entities, and you got a contract for the police and you got a contract for the dispatchers.
Same bargaining unit though, CBI. Same police, but no.
I think we could spend
association.
an awful lot of time talking about that, and, you know, if we can just push through these numbers.
Well, all I'm saying is that I think that argument is extremely debatable, because it's the same collective bargaining agreement, it's just two different parts of it, but you have the same union and everything, so. So what I agree with you that you're gonna have to resolve the financial piece of this.
Let's talk about that at the next department meeting. Let's get some figures together and some information from the lawyers about the fact that it is the same collective bargaining agreement. Do we have the opportunity to utilize him better?
Well, isn't that the nature, did the files go?
No, the nature is, well, there's that, but the nature is even more to the effect,
Okay,
obviously.
we can talk about it,
Yeah.
but I told him anticipate that coming, and I spoke to him, and it was on this matter, so we'll look into that.
Excellent. All right, so let's see if we can't get some information together by the next department head meeting so we can help Ken push forward on this.
Okay.
And I'm getting that doctor information, and,
Fantastic.
and I did make some progress.
Yeah,
But I think as far as this line's concerned, no matter which way, and without having a resolution,
I don't wanna come up short.
well, we don't have to come up short, but I also would rather not put it in the single line and possibly move it half or whatnot to a contingency, so we have better control over the possible 6 month. It'll still be there.
Okay.
It'll still be there for the use.
Good point.
But I think this is really critical, because $100,000 is like 1%.
Yeah, but half of this is not the person we're talking about. It's actually only 50 we're dealing with. The other 50 is the individual officer that we've never hired, because we went to part-timers. So basically, the $50,000 is our part-time money that we put out. So we're really talking about $50,000 for this one person that's working light duty. And I personally would almost love to see us pull out 50,000, but that's me. But we can't do that until we do it. But I definitely think that we should definitely pull out as much as possible. Maybe that will help us get more aggressive pursuing the matter.
Yeah, well, again, this is a major
Huge.
factor, because the decision on this will impact some other things that we talked about today that are plus-ups that might not stand once we get to the final numbers.
Right.
But if this is resolved in a favorable way to the village, and hopefully to the officer in question, that could free up to $100,000. And that $100,000 could meet a lot of shortfalls.
Well, that's something that we
Still
have,
actually
we'll be
shifts.
back digging, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, where we're at is here. This 83 won't change.
Right.
Because that
That's the
actually
cover
is gonna,
shifts.
that's cover shifts right now for both, no matter what. Get rid of them, do whatever, light duty.
But
It's
the
the,
77 will go.
it's the line item under his particular one is the one that can go.
That's right,
Which
it's
is
still.
beautiful.
Still at 100,000.
Actually, it's, it's 100,000, not
Still
50.
have $100,000 liability, but.
So,
But again, from everything that I understand, there's, I think, a pretty good probability you'll have resolution on this sooner than later.
I hope so. Okay, so that, everybody good on that, why that figure's there?
mhm.
Okay. Vacation days, you might see slight changes or no changes, or maybe it went down a little bit on some things. Again, going with average part-time daily wage, I get a figure of $200, and these vacation days, these are in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. This is what all the officers, their totals amount to, and this is what it would cost us to cover their shifts if it was a part-timer. So that's where you get these numbers. See vacation days, holidays, sick days, chart days, personal days. The reason why that went down in the chart days is because when I was removed, some of those numbers changed. I was removed from the unit. Jeez, I should correct myself there.
Careful.
Moving down, you'll see a line where it says bicycle foot patrol. Each year what we did, and you touched on it earlier, is it does get a little bit busier. And what we try to do to help keep things to a certain calm is we do supplement our patrols, not with a lot of extra help, but during the peak months, we try to do it Thursday through Saturday for 8 weeks. We put one extra officer on for 6 hour shifts, for a 6 hour shift. Most of the time, that's with a part-time officer. It could be with a full-timer. I went worst-case scenario if we were to bring in one full-time officer and did the numbers, it was 7,572.
You're talking about bringing in a full timer for overtime.
Possibly, that's worst-case scenario. In the past, we've been very lucky. We've been able to just grab a part-timer. But I got restrictions with them, that if they're over their 80 hours or 40 hours, whatever it is, you gotta be careful with that. But we've been very lucky. I think for the most part, last year we were able to use part-timers to fill that slot. So it's not guaranteed. I only put that in there as a worst-case scenario.
And that was 7,572?
Yes. Do you have last year's number, Rachel?
7,488?
So, very, very little movement on there.
Do you have the expenditures on that?
Not
What you
very-
actually, if you could, maybe
That would-
just get me a number on what you
I'd have to have the girls downstairs.
You mean this year, how much has been spent on that?
Just on this, yeah, that.
Yeah,
that
if you
would
could.
take a little bit of time. Let's see, then we got special events. Halloween and gate night, this doesn't change. We try to bring in the maximum amount of officers that we can. This is all based on part-timers. If I can grab 4 part-timers, and that's what we do. But it's 2 nights, it's not just Halloween, it's the night before Halloween, and then Halloween itself. Worst case scenario, it's gonna cost us $1,600. Bless you. 4th of July, that's all hands on deck. That's,
So this one, I'm sorry, this one's 2 people?
no, I believe
Or one
that's-
person?
I wanna say that's 4,
On Halloween and gate night?
yeah, we split it.
4 additional each night?
Yeah. Four part-time officers on each night working 8-hour shifts. And that can fluctuate, they can just have a dead night, it might be 6 hours, but I try to project for the worst-case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
4th of July, same thing, we get everybody, that's the one day out of the year where we mandatory everybody in. And now that covers, not just the parade itself and the fireworks, we have bed races and all that other stuff. And that's another figure that I would have to go downstairs with the ladies and just find out exactly, what did we spend on those events. Sometimes the events are well spread out, so it might be a little hard to go back and get that right away, but we can certainly try to tighten it up a little bit.
Right, that's an area, and the special event stuff's an area I'd like to tighten up a little bit. A lot of times, I know there's a possibility of an issue, but a lot of times we have an officer on like every roadblock during the parade and whatnot, where I don't know if having a few more people on, but not the entire force, or going out and seeing what the county can help us out with. The other thing I'd asked, that I wanna get a hard number on is, or a hard answer on is, can we utilize, security guard type people for the roadblocks rather than full, at $15 an hour, rather than $25 an hour, for armed police. Basically, is there a way that we can save and allow these, the force if they want to enjoy their 4th of July? That's something I'd like to look into, because I do think there's a savings there.
Okay. The county will not supply manpower if you do not utilize your entire force.
Oh, I thought that's why you brought him in, so he,
Well, first, they're not readily available. They're charging municipalities now to come out, but when you fill out your paperwork to get them, one of the questions is, are you utilizing your entire force?
Do they make a distinction between your full-time force versus part-timers,
They want to make sure you're using every asset available,
including part-timers?
because they're committing, they have nothing but full-time officers. Well, they have a handful of part-timers.
so on average, how many, assistant, talent do we get?
From who?
Town.
From the town, last year we got one. And I put it out to Chief Quinn, asking for.
About county.
County last year, did they give us 2 or none? Last year was none. And we put in, the year before they gave us 2. And we actually probably should have got charged, but they did us a favor and they supplied them at no cost.
Correct.
And then you got other events. I think when I gave you my 6-month report, I put all those extra events on there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that list here, but I did throw on this sheet the fall foliage, and we've been trying to work the night out. Came up with probably a conservative numbers, but at a part-timer rate for all these extra events, if it's 40 hours, you get that $1,000 figure. Troy, help me out here, is that the same as last year, or was it just a little less?
980.
Slight increase. West Point football, now this figure here, that $1,000 that I have on the right, last year we brought in, I wanna say we're up to 4,400 on the amount we brought in for doing this, that's the escorts.
Right.
And we're under contract to do the escorts with Army for the visiting team. And all that includes is us going down to the hotel where they're staying at and driving them to the stadium. Now, anything outside of that, we bill the school directly, the university or college that's here. And that rate goes up significantly,
Like what?
$600 a man.
I mean, what, as far as, you mean, they ask for more people?
They might ask for an escort back to Stewart Airport.
Okay.
So if I send 2 cars, it's $600 a car.
No, and we're getting revenue for it.
Right.
They're
Yeah,
paying-
and
Stanford
we're
did it
still
this
out,
year.
we still got $2,400 coming in, so that, but this will cover our man hours just for that.
Ken, what was the 4th of July figure for this year?
49,980.
Oh, I'm sorry,
4,988.
Yeah, 4,998. What do you have for last year?
4,900.
I think that was the pennies on the.
Now, one thing that I recommend the board consider is, on special events, a fee schedule, in addition to what we're doing with football fees. Very easily, like with the 4th of July committee, a contribution of police services could be the village's effort toward 4th of July, and then put a value to that. Special policing requirements, there's some things have gone on in recent times where there might be a need for policing, activities going on at 3, 4 in the morning that are unanticipated.
Protests?
There should be potential fees involved if police are used exclusively for some type of event that the regular taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for.
Are we able to do that for that?
Don't we have a permit for, like, to gather?
Assembly.
Yeah, like if somebody's gonna go up and protest outside the gate.
Right.
They have
I
to
know
do
that group last year filled one out.
Right,
I don't know the legal answer to that if they say, no, they don't need police, but
Well, that's not up to them.
kind of ties our hand, but they can say, no, I don't need them.
well, what happens if we just submit a bill to them, for the extra services that we have because of the fact that we anticipate.
I don't have the answer, I don't know.
Well, the
That would
board,
be illegal.
the board would probably need to have something on the books, that states that if extra policing is expended, that they could be subject to billing at whatever rate. You probably need that up in front, and that could be a condition on people's applications for permits. That copy could be given to anybody who gets a jukebox permit, or a band permit, or special event permit. Because, you know, just like your planning board with escrows, the taxpayer shouldn't have to bear the burden of individual events that require special policing that are above and beyond normally considered policing. And maybe Ben Gailey would be able to give the board some guidance on that. But, you know, again, if there are events where we're, as a village, are having to put extra resources that are outside of normal, that stuff is
Should be
technically
covered,
can be billed for. You know, just like Stanford pays, they want special handlers for
Exactly.
their football team for security, they're paying for it. There's no reason why, you know, if we have out of the ordinary things going on, that they might not be subject to the same type of fee.
I agree.
I thought we had agreement with that one time.
I think we have to get a permit, but I don't know if we ever attach a dollar figure to it for
No.
extra policing, you know?
Well, that's one of the reasons why, and we need to look over just the form itself was put together because of a need, and we really never revisited and tweaked it. And that's why we need to go over several different points of it, amend it, and again, my biggest thing is, rather than do it 6 times, maybe we'll work with the Anthony and the Recreation Committee, because half any events, parks and whatever, really need to go that direction, rather than us worrying about different things like a protest. I would love to throw a bill on anyone coming up saying, yeah, well, you can come here, but you can't come here unless you put this money in, because we're gonna need it. Bottom line, you can't, any of these protests that came up, you can't not have extra policing, because you have to be proactive, not reactive.
How do you collect?
You gotta pay beforehand, we all get arrested.
Yeah, you don't get permit.
Sometimes you don't, but sometimes you do. It's kinda like with ambulance billing, right?
Pardon?
Kinda like. with
Yeah, you
ambulance
like
billing.
that, don't lie.
If you look at ambulance billing, sometimes you collect, sometimes you don't, right? Majority of people pay.
I like
If
that, has
you've
to go to
got their
legal.
social security number.
Can't even get that.
Yeah.
But still, even with ambulance billing, it's sometimes elusive, sometimes to get that money. Not all the ambulance billing gets recovered.
Well, at the very least, it's not gonna hurt to update the forms and to look into this, because bottom line, worst case scenario is we already get what we have. Best case scenario, we start getting fees for people utilizing the facilities. And not to say, on that, you know, we've had several events at Roe Park that have had nothing to do with people from this community. I know at least 3 from last year.
Well, that's different, I can see.
That's what I'm talking about. We,
Correct.
you know, and that can be part of the thing, if you're a taxpayer, we can work that in somehow, maybe not.
Demonstrators at the gate.
Right, maybe not.
Yeah, but there's nothing different from somebody driving down the road speeding, getting pulled over. It's an individual handling, there's a cost to that. It turns out to be a fine or a summons, okay? The regular taxpayer's not paying at that point for that police officer's time. The fines
Right.
involved in that activity. There's no real difference when you're dealing with extra policing on special events. It's just not a summons, in this case, it's a user fee.
I'm in. We'll look into that. What else you got?
All right, moving right down to the training's the next one on the salary part of it. Slight increase, and that's only because of the anticipated collective bargaining agreement being settled one of these days. 32 hours for each officer. Charlie, what figure did you have last year? I want to say this figure's a little bit lower.
16,640?
Yeah, reason that went down is because I don't get overtime anymore, so you take my figures out, not that they were that high, but now it's only 8 full-time officers at that 32 hours, at the average overtime rate for a full-timer.
Now, why are we doing that in overtime and not in regular time?
Well, it does work out, sometimes you can do them during regular time. For example, let's say Detective Kuhn's working the day shift and the training happens to be during that shift. And that's best case scenario. This is absolute worst case scenario.
Okay.
And sometimes I just have no control over that. Firearms training might happen on a Saturday. Detective Kuhn might be off, I'm using him because he's right in front of me. He's off Saturday, so I gotta pay him overtime. Best case scenario for firearms is I'm gonna have 6 guys on duty, but they're working 3 different shifts. Firearm happens during the day. So, but that's why, it's hard to factor that in.
Can firearms training be scattered? How often do they offer the training?
If we had our own firearms instructor, which we're working on right now with one of the officers, actually 2, we'd have some more flexibility, but now I'm relying on other agencies. So not only do I have to secure the facility or the location, we're using West Point right now, I also gotta coordinate a firearms instructor, so we're working at their beck and call. Once I get our guys certified or our guys certified, we'll have a lot more flexibility where I can do that. But now, is he working on his shift? Do I gotta pay him 8 hours or 6 hours?
Do we have any reciprocal agreements with some other police departments as far as when they're doing training where maybe our guys can participate with their guys and get the economies of scale? Because the one perception thing is firearms training on overtime. Most of the public, they just don't go for that. They feel like that's, I've heard from many people, geez, why are we paying overtime for training, firearms training? Why is it being done during the shift? So it's a perception thing
And some of them you can get
Yeah.
during the shift, you really could.
Yeah.
If you had a full-time firearms instructor and that's all he did,
Yeah.
and you had a range downstairs, you could cycle your people in
Yeah.
on their shifts.
Yeah.
So,
When do you expect to finish this training?
the firearms school, there's 2 parts to that. You gotta go to what's called instructor development, so you can teach. And the state requires that, otherwise you can't certify anybody. He's finished that phase, now he has to go to the firearms school, which is until May.
And when is that done?
I wanna say it's 4 weeks.
Okay.
Now, this last round of training that we did, we used West Point and the sheriff's office came down and certified us.
Do they come down for free? Okay, so the only real cost is us scheduling them.
For our people, yes. And like I said, I can't, some of them you will be able to scoop up during their shift. I know we rotated the 3 to 11 shift. Once the day people finished, all right, now you go back to work. Somebody's gotta cover the road. If you get a full-timer or part-timer, preferably a part-timer to save money, but it doesn't always work out that way. But the 3 to 11 guys think about, now they're on straight time, but maybe someone covering their shift is on overtime. You don't know how it's gonna work out.
we supply the ammo, police department supplies the
We have
ammo
to
for
buy
the
ammo.
training?
So that's, in the 32 hours, that firearms is included. Now, to get accredited, which is something that's one of my long-term goals, and there's a lot of little pieces that have to go into place to get there. And one of them is, each officer has to have at least 32 hours of training. Now, the firearms is added into that.
As part of the 32.
And then, of course, with the part-timers, that, I put the same hours, they're no different, their qualifications are no different than a full-timer. So it's 32 hours per officer, their rate's a little bit lower, and you get 8,797. Charlie, that might have went up a little bit,
Did.
because we have more part-timers now. Now, below that, this is a new line, just like with the dispatchers, there was no factoring in, all right, we're bringing these new hires in, and actually, you get a high turnover with part-timers. You gotta train them. Now, if you get a new recruit, let's say he just came out of the academy, the minimum standards, and this is gonna be mandated by the state effective January 2015, is 160 hours, minimum.
Jesus.
Now, that's if they come right out of the academy. Now, let's say I grab a guy that was already working in another department. I don't have to give them 160, I may have to, I don't know. That's up to the field training officers when they're evaluating them. So, what I did was, for a part-time officer, anticipating that they're not a fresh recruit, I put 4 part-time officers at 80 hours of field training at their part-time rate, the highest part-time rate. And that's where you get that $8,000 figure. We just never accounted for it, so we gotta have, now there again, it might be too conservative, or maybe it's a little high. I'm not too sure, because this is, this high rotation, we've never had something like that, and plus we just never accounted for it. So by next year, I'll be able to tell you, all right, so last year, we spent X amount of dollars. Maybe we can add to that or decrease from it.
Do we have any, because of our part-timers, do we have any clawback if they leave before a preset period of time that they have to pay the training out?
No, but in a full-time contract, there is.
There is.
And it depreciates, it's a 3-year term. If you leave within the first year, you have to pay back salary, training. If it's 2 years, I believe it's just training, I don't know what the third year is.
Can we get anything for the part-timers for the hours you put in?
Anything's negotiable.
Yeah, it's negotiable. Absolutely.
Well, the part-time gigs, we're not, we send them to the academy, right? We do with the full-timers, that's why the recoup is more.
Yeah.
You're only training, field training them, and
That's
field
not
training
part of it,
80
that's
hours
part
is
of it.
not
What's that?
a lot.
That's not
Yeah,
part of
it's
it.
160.
No,
That's the
160.
minimum, that's on that
Hold on.
San Diego model,
Hold on.
so.
So,
Right.
going forward, we can look
Right.
at some of these things.
Negligible.
Yeah, I don't
We do 3
remember
months.
what's in there.
Yeah.
for
More
part-timers. Right.
Well, like I said,
Yeah,
160 is just the minimum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
20 months.
Every year,
Full-timers,
every time we do it, we get better at it.
And your field training officers, and that's another thing, the state's
Probably
gonna
good
mandate,
there
you
anyway.
have to have field training officers train these new people.
And
So,
you didn't catch it.
and we're ahead of that curve already, we just got 2 guys finished.
That's what we're gonna get
I just
here
like
anymore.
a total of 4 now, so.
Do you have any instructor development guys that are certified
Yeah,
instructors?
yeah, PJ just went, Troy just went,
He's going for the Blues and Fire.
he's gonna be
Okay.
on fire. So, and that's gonna help us out with the training. He was just asking if we had guys that were instructor development qualified, and yes, we do. And Paul Troy Jr. is one of the newest, and one of our part-time guys, Joe Mercurio. So and these guys, that, you know, if they're working with somebody, they can give them the block of instruction right there, so that would help with the training. But this is, you know, I gotta give us a good solid number, so we're not falling short of it. I don't wanna
Right.
fall short. If it's, if we come out at the end of the day and we got extra, then just like the fire department, then let's buy another vehicle. Oh, we'll get to that
Wow.
later.
Wow.
All right, so that's the new line with the $8,000. Charlie, that's not on last year's sheet. Emergencies, now this is the unknown here. And it would take a little bit of digging, but I'm sure we can go back and look at previous years, but emergencies, storms, accidents, disasters, they're never the same in any calendar year. Those fluctuate, I can't even predict them. Same with court, demonstration, investigation, special events, these are numbers that, again, they can be very conservative, maybe they're a little high, maybe one year they are conservative, one year they're not. So, Charlie, help me out here, last year, 4 storms, major accidents, disasters, I have 4,400 for this year.
And that's
Is
what
that-
we had
It's
last
the
year.
same with the bottom number, the 12,100?
Yep.
So I put no change on that, and that's just something that, and these are things that I try to look at each year. I try to get better at analyzing the numbers and making sense of them. Some of them I'll probably never be able to make sense of,
Right.
but.
What I'm looking more for is actual what we spent. Like, I know you used the same, you budgeted the same amount, but have we actually even, over the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm not asking for tomorrow, but this is the numbers we need to be generating for the future, is for overtime for court, last year we budgeted 12, we used 9, we used 10. So that we're more confident saying, well, we can take off 2,000 here, because we've only maximized out of 10. That's something that you need to start generating in your annuals, is actual expenditures, so that we have that, and we feel more confident of, you know, once you show us actual expenditures, maybe we're not gonna take off. You're like, well, actually, we budgeted this every year, and we've been spending 14, 14, 15, 14, 15. We have to increase that, and you have justification for increasing it. So that's what I'm looking for. I know the budget numbers are the same, but that doesn't,
Expenditure.
that's not really telling me that we actually spent the money on that.
Some of it's not coded though. It's,
I know.
You know, so it's really a matter of, the department
Right.
keeping a log.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I have created spreadsheets for all these items, so but I don't have that many years of data to go
Well,
back.
that's-
I mean, if I
I'm
go
not
back,
putting
if
that
I have
today.
5 years of data, and that's how I'm noticing some of these other
Right.
openings, it's like, wow, that's not even anywhere on my sheet, so.
Well, that, what I'm saying is, as you're saying, you're creating, that's perfect, and that's exactly what we're talking about as far as department heads. Now, for next year, we can work data, have more data as far as, you know, well, I only really spent half of that. And you know what, I'm gonna tell you that, and I'm still gonna ask for it, because I need it in this one. This way, we won't be taking off the ones you need, but we will have to cut down on these because you don't need it. I realize you can't, but it's the same budget every year, but if we're gonna cut 10%, it's gonna, I want it to come off areas that you don't necessarily need, not 10% off your salary, which I really have no problem cutting anyhow.
And I am tracking it, and I just don't have enough data to really give a good, this is,
Okay.
but we are tracking it.
Questions?
No, and there's also an understanding that the department heads are a little bit more involved on their budgets, even the salary lines. So it's gonna take a little while for you to pick up the experience as far as tracking previous years. Because I know sometimes some of these numbers were put in. I know some of the other department heads said, look, I really didn't have anything to do with that. That number was put in there and I accepted it. There's gonna be a little bit more, let's say tangible discussion as to why we're gonna have one number versus another, and that will be helpful, as Mayor, you're saying. Not cut 10% off across the board, target it to the things that are identified as being not necessary or maybe over budgeted.
Bang. Any other questions? Nope, moving on. Bingo,
Contractual
big issue.
or equipment?
Oh, we're still on police?
Yeah, we're still on police.
Let's not skip that out.
But we got contractual and equipment, 'cause what's next on your?
Equipment.
Oh boy, you were actually swing big. All right, new vehicle.
No.
Let me at least get it out there. I put in for a 2014 Ford Explorer. It's the new SUV. My vehicle that I have, as chief's vehicle, is a police interceptor. It's a Ford Taurus. It's an all-wheel drive vehicle. The Ford Explorer is a little bit more in cost. And the reason why I am requesting this vehicle is because we have 2 SUVs in the fleet. Now, in the winter months, especially with the winter that we had this year, and then you factor in that we back up the town of Highlands Police Department on that mountain, and any other bad road out there. Our 2 Durangos they were both purchased in 2008.
That was a first mistake.
And my concern is that these vehicles, they're getting equal wear. So that means eventually they're gonna both die, probably at the same time. I'm not saying they're gonna die tomorrow or anything, but we got a good maintenance program.
So they go that old?
The 2 Durangos,
Yeah.
the SUVs, yeah, they're that old. So, what I'd like to do is replace one of the older vehicles in the fleet, which is a 2006 or 7, I think it's a 2006 Crown Victoria, with one of the Ford Explorers. And what that'll do, it'll do two things. It'll replace a vehicle that is went far beyond what it was expected to live for a police vehicle, and it will provide us a good replacement for that, and also it'll give us an alternative. Let's just say one of these Durangos goes down. So that's why it's an Explorer, not a police interceptor.
How many
which is
cars
the
do we have
car.
total?
Total,
Six, isn't it?
total cars is 6.
So 2 Durangos and 2 Durangos, 1 Crown Vic.
Two,
We have 5 patrol vehicles. An unmarked vehicle, we have 2 unmarked vehicles, one's mine and one's used as a detective / utility car.
That's the old one.
That's the old, yeah.
The yours is a Fusion, or what kind is yours?
The one that I have,
Yeah.
it's actually a Taurus, they call it a police interceptor, it's a
Okay.
Ford Taurus.
Okay. And the other one is what kind?
And then we have 2, 3, 4 Crown Vics, and then the 2 Durangos, Dodge Durangos.
That's 7. So you have 7 vehicles.
No, it's
5 marked cars and
2,
2 unmarked.
3, and 1.
Yeah, it's 7.
The Taurus is the only one? Oh, there's
What's
7
the other
cars?
7 cars total.
Oh.
The one's a Crown Vic, the other Hummer?
Yes, the 2002. And usually what we do there is you take your oldest car, when you put it out, take it off patrol, then you cycle that into the unmarked unit.
One of the things that was discussed offline between me and the fire department was beginning to budget on an annual basis, so the money is there when it's time to buy a vehicle. And
You're
so-
talking about a reserve fund?
Yeah,
Yeah, we started that.
so you,
And what happened was
it was used for
it was a
overtime?
great, no, it was a great idea, but the problem was our fleet was so depleted, and when we were double purchasing cars and they're aging at the same time, the thought behind all that was if the police department's socking away $10,000 a year, every 3 years you get it up to that 30,000, which that's going right to outfit a car and get a new car. That's great. But it wasn't great because our fleet was so old, we needed to rotate faster. Now, we were starting that, let's see, in 2011, when Chief Miller first left, I seen the age of the fleet, and I said, we gotta start turning these cars over. We gotta, in order for this reserve fund to really work and get up to par, is you gotta get the fleet in that rotation. So, 2011 we bought a car, 2012, 2013 we bought a car, but that car we purchased off the reserve funds. We needed to cycle one more, we needed to budget one more time in our equipment line to get us up to speed. It depleted it all the way down, so that's why this year I have to put it in the budget, in the equipment line. It might help. Now, let's just say this car came and we were able to rotate that into the cycle. Now, I don't know where the reserve fund account is now. I believe it's only got like 10 or 12,000 in there, because we did put, and I guess you would have to go find that for us, is what is the status with the reserve funds for vehicles? Do you know that even exists? Was that passed on to you, or?
Well, again, as I mentioned before, it's not a traditional reserve fund. Basically, it was in the fund balance, and we have a fund balance, so technically, the money is there. I just don't have any detail as to what it is accumulated to and so on, because essentially, every budget it rolls over. So when it says, police or vehicle, $10,000, then there's an assumption that there's $10,000 available. The reality is that $10,000 is part of a fund balance that has a lot of stuff in it. So really then is up to the board to determine whether or not they feel that the adequate funds are in there to be able to do it. My recommendation has always been to set up a proper reserve fund, so that there is no question. The money's there, the money's there. If you have to accelerate that reserve fund by putting 15,000 or 20,000 in your initial seed money for it, then that's, what you do. What complicates matters is that now we have a 2% tax cap. What we didn't do, let's say in previous years with some of the reserves, are a lot harder to catch up on now. Okay, and I wouldn't recommend borrowing, because, there was money borrowed for equipment before, and it's not for bands, it's not a good practice. It just increases your debt instead of making you disciplined to budget annually for the money.
Are you aware, so is there any money in the reserve funds that you know of, technically speaking, reserve fund for vehicles?
There's money in the fund balance, and certainly what would happen is that we'll do an estimation of what the fund balance is. Traditionally, fund balances, the rule of thumb is to report as little fund balance as possible, because you want to protect that fund balance. Fund balance is an estimate. It's an estimate of where your financial position is after your revenues and expenses for the year, and then previous years. If you notice in last year's number, fund balance, it came out to $275,000 in the general fund. That's what was estimated.
The tough thing is the previous treasurer just put everything into the fund balance, and.
Which isn't uncommon.
Right,
It's
you've
just
explained
not
that, but.
the exact way to do it.
But this is where we run into trouble, because he told us also that money had been put in to cover the contracts and had been spent. So we're faced with that nut to crack too.
Yeah, and for what, when we talked about the, borrowing situation, and do we have 400,000 to borrow, do we not? When we were in the position that maybe we did borrow that 400,000, I became very nervous, because I know what's in Orange County Trust, I know what our expenses are gonna be for the rest of the year, and I'm sitting there going, we're well below $1 million, okay? Ideally, I believe our fund balance is probably north of the 275 that's listed, but that number is always going to be on the conservative side, because you don't wanna overshoot and then find out that let's say you said the fund balance is $700,000, and your tax levy is whatever that number is, plus 700 to make your total expenses. Well, if it turns out that your fund balance estimate is wrong, where are you gonna get the money? Because you're not gonna go back to the taxpayer 3/4 of the year in looking for those funds. So that's why the fund balance estimates tend to be on the conservative side, and, well, you can, I would put it to you this way, if the fund balance is 0, that's probably cause for alarm. Okay? Even though if it said 0, it might be at 200, 300,000.
Right.
It's an estimate. So, so I would, my recommendation is with the vehicles is that we set up a vehicle reserve for police. I know that's
I agree.
what it is.
That's
Well,
what
that
should be.
No question.
And
And then
then,
we only spent 5,000 on 35, which is great.
and then you determine how much you wanna put in. Now, this 60,000 is for 2 vehicles, Kenny?
I didn't, no, 35,000.
60 is the total for equipment, 35,000 for the
Yeah,
vehicle.
we didn't even move up.
You
the
still got
vehicles.
5 other items for the.
Oh, okay, all
That's
right.
right. So, Charlie, the short answer is I'm aware of the, I thought it was reserve fund, vehicle
Right.
reserve fund, and yeah, I really, I don't like to deplete it if I don't have to, and I think the last purchase we made, it depleted it a little bit earlier than I would have hoped for, but, you know, this is what we're faced with the fleet. It is an aging fleet. We have,
Yeah, nothing was
Actually-
put in last year.
and that's what, there's no line item here where I was told by the previous treasurer, just, you don't have to put that in, that is just a given, so.
Well, I think you had budgeted for a vehicle and it got cut out.
Yes,
That's essentially
so,
what
but
happened.
I didn't, there was no line created to do a reserve fund. So that's why I kept it off of this year, but there's nothing there to put 10,000, and I don't think I ever brought that to your attention, Ed, but that's, I'm asking you now, is that, you know, we talked about.
We put a code in, we put a
Okay.
code in for, police,
So-
police vehicle reserve.
So-
I thought we did, you go to like a car every other year, basically,
Ideally, you would wanna do it every 3 years, once that, you know,
but I mean, how often do you get a car? I mean, how many cars you buy in 10 years, let's say?
Basically, with 6 vehicles, you're probably looking at least one every 2 years, if not a little bit faster, because your turn then is every 6 years, a car rotates.
Yeah.
6 years at, what's the average mileage, 20,000 miles on a car?
on a police vehicle.
Yeah.
No, it's,
30 to 40 a year.
yeah,
30 to
it's
40.
double than what
Okay, so,
Especially since you only have 6 vehicles.
yeah, so you're looking at, if you have a turn of 6, you're looking at 180,000 when that car's ready to
Well, the
rotate.
2 vehicles in the rotation, like the chief's vehicle, the
Yeah,
last
no.
one, we rotated that one after 11 years.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
but
still
I-
in the fleet,
But you
so-
said you have 7, I didn't even
But
include
patrol
that.
vehicles, 1, 2, 3, you have 5 patrol vehicles. So ideally, you would hope that you wouldn't have to trade, 2 years probably, but you would hope every 3 years, if you got the rotation right.
Yeah. So what
You
is
use
the
the-
adequate number for reserve fund? 15,000 a year?
Well, it's been 10, that's what's been earmarked each year, right?
Yeah, you can't generate that kind of money in 2 or 3 years.
Well, 10,000 a year is gonna take us 3 years to get, and I
So
didn't
which means
create
that
that
you're
amount.
gonna, if you're doing it that way, your 5th car is gonna be 15, every 15 years you're gonna change a car, it's probably long, that's probably long. I think with a 5 vehicle fleet, you're looking at every 2 years, because that means that at the 10-year point, that guy's being retired for the next one.
But maybe 15,000 is a realistic number for a reserve fund every year?
I think that,
Like 10,000.
I think if you're doing it every 2 years, you gotta do
You have to, you
15,000.
have to do 15.
Not that fast.
That's if we're rotating them out. That's if we don't tighten our belt. Let us build up the fund. That's what I'm looking at. I understand that the math suggests 15.
We're thinking worst case scenario, if you're going 15,
Right.
you would hope that 10 would get you, you would be able to do it every 3. I don't have.
You got 10 every 3, I would think, yeah. But like you said, if you fleet is
Yeah, if the fleet was
completely
well
done.
maintained and, it's not, you don't got 2 cars already in the mix that are 5, 6 years old already. So.
Your oldest car's a 2002?
Yes,
Okay, and that, so,
and that's the limited use
10,
one.
that's here's your 10-year point. So the
Right.
next oldest is what year?
But the only reason why that one lasted so long, that was the chief's vehicle.
Okay,
So the
so
next oldest is 2007, and that's the one that needs to go.
that's 7 years.
Which one is 934 and 935?
Those are the Durangos.
Okay.
That's why those mileage, in the winter months, like I said, they get used. It's the nature of the beast.
Because based on this past month, we're racking up between 20 and 25,000 miles on those two vehicles. But only about 12,000 on the other ones.
That's because they're not, during the snow, we've got
Can't
to
use the
usually
Crown
submit, those cars don't operate in the snow. And it's not like we're just getting a little bit of snow, we've gotten pounded. And even when we get a little bit, we're called upon to assist the town, so, you can't take the Crown Vic up on the mountain when there's snow on it. And we got a lot of hills in this village.
That's where
Trust me,
some-
with the new Ford vehicles now, even if you get the Taurus, you can get them in all-wheel drive. It's better than what you have now, which is the rear-wheel drive.
So some of the police departments aren't buying those Dodge, what are those?
The Durangos.
Well, no, the
Oh,
one that looks
Chargers?
like, the Charger.
Yeah.
Looks like a muscle car because it's rear-wheel drive and it won't.
Well, so are the Crown Vics.
Yeah.
Listen, you can only move around so much in them. I remember when I was driving in the winter with the Crown Vic, I got around pretty much everywhere. But once there's a certain amount of snow and slush on the road, it doesn't matter how good of a driver you are, or if it's all-wheel drive. Sometimes the all-wheel drive won't get you anywhere. The SUVs, they work a little bit better in the snow, so.
Okay, what else you got?
Okay, so then vehicle lettering. There's a figure on there, so I think it was $650 last year. I don't even know if it's on last year's because it was cut out. Charlie, do you have that?
It was 750 originally.
All right, so same figure there. Next on equipment is, just like the vehicles, bulletproof vests. They have a 5-year lifespan.
Why?
Well, it's a manufacturer, that's what they want to stamp on it and say, once it's outside that, the ballistic fibers break down into
Two
Kevlar.
reasons. One is liability, two is recycling sales.
But if they don't use it, what's the difference with an old 5-year one and a newer?
The Kevlar breaks down,
So, is that, that's
That's
what
what
I'm
it says it
asking.
right on the.
5-year
That's what I'm
manufacturing.
asking.
From the
Everything,
manufacturer
everything
expires.
goes back to liability.
Yeah.
I understand liability, but what I'm saying is, that's what I'm looking for. What you're telling me is in 5 years, the actual thing that's protecting you is breaking down.
Supposedly.
Okay.
Kevlar.
So,
That's what they say.
And I don't wanna test that, I don't want
Yeah,
to
no.
test that. So, when I took over, that was another thing, now we have more officers in the ranks, so all these vests, the majority of them are purchased at the same time, and they weren't getting rotated out. So each year, for the last 3 years, I've been budgeting for at least 4 vests, just to try to catch everyone up, and then get that rotation where nobody's expired.
right. Just to make a note, I'm gonna need copies of these, your sheets for everybody, when we make the discussion. Same thing with all the departments. We need these things so we know exactly what we're cutting. Not that I haven't cut the vests. What I'm saying is, you mentioned the vehicle lettering was cut, but we don't have that breakdown in the sheet. So I need you to supply copies and all the other people so that we have the actual breakdown. And when we know exactly what we're cutting.
You want me to get that to you guys tomorrow?
I do, thank you.
So what is the current cost per vest?
$450.
It went up $100?
There's 350 there,
Yeah.
then that was a low ball figure. So this is, and this
Somebody's
is,
commission.
this is
They
state
want
bid,
it.
this is state bid contracting here pricing, and this is the lower end of the vest. There's $800 vests out there.
Why aren't we getting those? Don't you care?
Of course I do. I got
That's what-
taxpayers who gotta carry.
Put $800 in, so I can cut it for free.
So it's 450 times 4, you get the 1,800. Computers, I mentioned those earlier. When we met with Firthcliffe last year, they did say that our computers are very old. I wanna say the ones that we have still breathing, they were purchased in 2003. Last year I was able to acquire from someone that was throwing away computers, 2008 computers. Worst news came earlier this year, and late last year actually, that Windows XP will no longer be supported. Like, that's just great, because that's what all of our computers have in it. So this June, we'll no longer have support for the XP
Microsoft won't support it.
yeah, Microsoft won't support.
For
So
Earthcliff could still support it to some degree, but if
they're
you
not
had-
gonna be able to give the critical updates, the patches for
Yeah,
the
if you had
security
something, if you had a
patches.
hard down situation, it could be a problem. So you have to look at making the transition, but it's not as immediate as, you know,
Why can't we load a different program?
you can, you gotta pay for it though.
That-
You gotta pay for site
And
license.
like Firthcliffe was telling us, with the ancient computers that we have, it's not even gonna be cost effective.
Plus the server, I believe, Gina servers XP? Yeah, so your primary brains is running on XP.
That's a big expenditure.
So it's just,
I think I have not Windows, Server 2008, and I don't think that's a XP based.
no, it's not. 2008's past XP.
And what we did was,
It's probably Vista actually.
when we bought that, we had to downgrade it to 2003, Server 2003, and that was so it can be compatible with one of our record management systems, or the impact, or the, it's a program that the state uses, tracks. So we downgraded, but we still had the 2008 hardware, so they first could put that back into our server. The server is more expensive than these computers. Now, this is to replace all our computers, that's where you got the 8,286.
The computers at your desk in the office.
Yep. And then the workstations, the booking room, the interview room. And this is based off of the prices that Firthcliffe, they gave us a quote back in, what did they do, this November or something like that, Ed?
Yeah, West Point.
Taser, same thing, there are a 5-year life cycle on these things. I had another one go down just the other day. I contacted Taser, and this particular one, the warranty on it, and it was the extended warranty, expired in 2010. So now we're down to 2, and that's just enough to outfit the patrols that are out there. We usually have 4, just in case one went down, we could send it out or whatever, or if you had the extra patrols on. So to replace our tasers, it's gonna be $4,347, that's for 4 of them.
So I'll have 6.
Well, yes, you're right.
So they're about $1,100 a piece.
Roughly.
Boy, you can buy some nice hardware with that kind of money.
That's all the tasers.
9mm, everything.
Well, that gets us down to the next item,
Oh,
Glock
here we go.
pistols.
Glocks?
It's what we carry now. The Glocks that we carried were purchased in the early 90s. They're the Generation 1, they're now in Generation 3s. To buy 20 pistols, it's gonna cost us $9,900. Now, that's the worst, absolute worst case scenario. We talked to a vendor and they said that with these Glocks that we have now, they would give us $250 per pistol. So that'll take that number down.
So you're gonna give 20 to get 20.
Yes.
Okay, so the Glocks will look little bit, 480 a piece.
Would you give it $250 credit on each pistol?
We can cut that number down almost in half.
Yeah, so you're looking at about $5,000,
And that gave us a total for equipment, $60,000 and $60,083.
So
Yep.
when you're asking for 9.9, you're really asking for 5.5. Do you including the rebate somewhere else?
This is the worst case. This is if they're, the vendor all of a sudden says, you know what, that was yesterday's offer and it's not
Right.
there anymore. So this is worst case scenario. Now, just real quick on the equipment stuff. I had mentioned that I had just recently put in for an open grant with Entergy.
Right.
Now, some of these items are on that grant. Now, my hope is that we'll get something. Entergy's usually pretty good. They might not
Right.
give you the whole amount. I put in for $30,000, we might get 10. We might get 15, I hope 30.
Yeah.
So, if we get any money, that can be used for some of these items. But right now, I just don't know what they're gonna do with it.
Ken's one of the only ones that's working besides, the other guys have Todd and the engineers to help, but I really want to put some more effort into assisting Ken for more grants. He's already got 2, I believe, this year, there, and I think one other, and he's applied for the energy.
Some training money for.
There's more money out there, and this is where we gotta push as a department head. Possibly, what I really want you to do is start looking for more training, whether it's online or wherever, in grant writing, to get more proficient at it. Because that's what I'm looking for from the department head, is bringing more money to cover it. See, there is no question, I got these already 3 covered, I want the car. I just bought it $50,000, gave me the car now, no big deal. And that's what I'm looking for. The other thing being, just, if you can make a note in your notes, basically what happened with the fire department, as far as the car being available under last year's budget. That's another thing that, to me, going forward, I'm gonna be a little more, I'm gonna have no problem cutting more if you're not adhering to what we're asking you to. If we're saying we're cutting the lettering, we're not giving you the $750 for the lettering, and you get the lettering, because you felt that was more important, that's gonna be an issue with me. When you keep asking for more money, and you keep spending it on the stuff we had, we said, look, because traditionally what it is, once we give him the $600,000, he spends the $600,000 the way he has as a department head. Somewhere, somehow, we've gotta do better justifying of, I know you said you didn't want this, we've gotta be informed when there's a deviation from the thing. Not that their department heads, that's what they're getting paid for. But as the board members, we need to be informed when they deviate from the budget that we've cut and approved. And they need to justify why they're going that direction. I only bring this up because you've itemized these out well, and I already picked 2 things I'm gonna cut. But
The lettering?
the lettering, yep, I'm not gonna tell you that, it was a surprise. But the thing is no matter cut or not, this is the second time he's gone for grants for the clocks. And he, at one point, he did have money set aside for the clocks, and then it was that whole gray area with the budget, and it was put somewhere else. So this is why you did have clocks set aside, you did have the 9,000.
Must have been 2 years.
It was 2 years ago, but the problem being
That's
is.
the one that went in the general fund?
Yeah,
I believe
right to
so.
general fund. But that's the thing where, if you're showing us the follow-through as, I'm following all your specs, then that will help us to assist you when you say, where's my Glock money?
So I can take one of
You-
the ones that you crossed off, put it back
No,
on?
definitely not. Okay, I just wanna make sure you know that, and we get that to the other department
Mayor,
heads.
just understand right now, the way the policy, I understand it is that once the budget is approved, the department head has discretion as to what they do with the money. So the question is, to what level are you doing this? Are you doing it at a trustee liaison level, or do you want the whole board to weigh in on deviations? And what's your threshold?
Everybody should be informed at a minimum.
Yeah, you know, do you want it to be
But
where
we
the
haven't.
department head
Right.
informs a trustee that's their liaison about it? Or does it actually, you know, any deviation over $1,000 needs to go in front of the whole board?
I think initially, because one, nothing's been done right now, I think let's at least start with the liaison, then inform liaison to inform the board as part of the report. Okay, that there is 3 deviations, and whether it's $1,000 threshold or whatever we feel, if it's a full line item, even if it's $500, but a full line item that we approved, that we're gonna put off till next year as the police, because we don't feel it's as important as 2 more Glocks, then just, we need to know. And that way, I feel that's gonna affect us when we're budgeting for the following year. We gave you the money for this, you went and spent it all over here, you know, you need to justify that because it's on us, it's on the
A
taxpayers.
rationale for the
That's all.
change of
Yeah.
priority.
And not that, you know, and again, this is going to make them more responsible with how they spend their money, and that's the point. Don't be trying to throw numbers in there now, it's over, I got it in black and white.
You're still cutting
I
too.
see what you're going
Did you
at.
ever get your $9,000 back? What?
It's gone. All right, let's keep going.
Contractual?
All right,
Contractual.
Oxygen, top of the line there, that was cut by $1,000, and I don't see any increase. Last year, Charlie, do you have last year's figures? Is it
Well,
still
last
the
year,
1,900, or?
You did the switch over, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
switched, what
So-
did we end up paying though?
I don't have an exact figure in front of me right now, because we're
The-
still working at this
The
year.
ask was 1,800, but that
No,
was
we cut,
before.
last year, 1,000 was cut right off
Yeah.
the top of that, so it was 980, and that's exactly what it is now. Till I get good data where I can make an adjustment to that.
No, because it should be much less than
Oh, absolutely.
that, yeah.
Up front, there was a little bit of cost because we had to buy the
Buy the
tanks, but
tanks.
the long, it's still, that number is gonna go down next year, definitely. I don't, like I said, I don't have enough data to support it, my spreadsheets are still somewhat new, and the more data I get in, the better I can make the adjustments. The uniform maintenance, that's all contractual. So you got the 9 full-time officers, 9 officers that get the full-time rate, and then 11 part-timers. So those figures there should be the same as last year, because I didn't have any new numbers in front of me, so I didn't know whether to increase it. I don't know if the collective bargaining agreement, if there's any movement on it. And even if there is, it's usually minimal. I think it's $25 or something, so. So those numbers were the same. Uniform replacement, a new issue. I know last year we raised that up, and it was a pretty big jump on where it was in the past. And the reason being is,
It doubled.
that was so anemic on where it was. I couldn't believe it. I mean, a pair of boots alone is over $100, and I got 20 officers now in the ranks, so you gotta factor that in. If I had to outfit an officer right now, let's just say I didn't have anything to get them, and I'm not counting the gun and the badge and all that, so that all the uniform and equipment would cost $2,000, just for one officer.
But when you're doing full-time, part-time here, what are the two top, isn't that for boots and whatever?
No, that is, in their contract, that's for uniform maintenance,
Dry cleaning.
so dry cleaning.
So in the contract, we're responsible to outfit the officers,
Yep,
uniform,
and then,
rate,
yeah, they
everything?
don't get a uniform allowance for that, like some
Right.
departments do. So, once we give them their initial issue, it's up to them to maintain it, keep it clean and pressed, and then we replace it as on an as-needed basis.
Boots too?
Yeah. And the officers are good about that, they don't abuse it.
Is that in their contract?
Oh, yeah.
With
Yeah.
uniform replacement, a new issue?
That's right in the contract.
Because, I mean, what if a guy gets, I mean, is anyone going through 3 pairs of boots?
No, they're not going through that quick. I'm keeping tabs on it. It wasn't tracked before, but now what I'm doing is whenever someone comes, I tell them first to show me their boots. Let me see, you gotta turn those into me. Then I document it down, I write it down when they bought a new pair.
Essentially, the way the contract's written, they could recycle it every year.
That's how it is
the
with
boots-
DPW
the
and whatnot.
boots,
So it's written.
the boots, they can damage them and I'd have to replace them on the spot. So, and like I said, the officers, from what I've seen so far, they're not abusing it. And a pair of boots, you'd be lucky to get 2 years out of it. Some of these officers are stretching for 3 years.
Yeah, it's pretty involved, 2 short sleeve shirts, 2 long sleeve shirts, 2 pants, 2 hats, 1 jacket, 1 raincoat, 2 ties, a pair of shoes, pair of gloves, pair of boots, set of insignias, 1 complete gun belt, handcuffs, and service revolver. The only thing that probably doesn't get recycled every year are the gun belt, handcuffs,
Right.
service revolver.
And that's why I said, if I had to do it soup to nuts, right from the beginning, a full outfit for somebody, it's gonna be $2,000.
There's also a cleaning fund for each officer, $600 a year.
And here again, something like this, I don't have enough data on my spreadsheet to really make significant changes to it. I knew it had to be increased though, it's just I think this was in the red every year.
Not that I care about $38, but is it in the contract for 600? Because you have 637.50.
And for the year, yep.
Well, the contract doesn't specify the.
It breaks it
price
down
of
in
the-
2 payments.
Price of the uniforms, it specifies cleaning.
The cleaning, and it's broken down where they get a payment in January and then again in,
No,
June.
payment in June, payment in December.
oh, June and December, I'm sorry. So they get 2 payments, this is divided by 2. But that's what they get for the year.
Okay. Okay.
And then, down below, you got the miscellaneous things, and that was just all lumped in, and this is how I received the budget when I got it, and I hadn't made any significant changes to it. Said I don't have enough data to either add to that or take away, but the figures, you'd be very conservative. 3860, Charlie help me out, what was last
I
year's?
think we dropped it to 2250.
For the miscellaneous?
Yeah, miscellaneous came in at 3250, And then I've got a note minus 1,000. I don't know if it held at 3250 or dropped to 2250.
I don't know how it would have dropped because that, when I looked at my spreadsheet, just for last year's figures, that would have dropped us way under what we actually spent, so I don't know who would have cut that. I know 1,000 was taken out of the oxygen last year. So maybe that note got crossed.
I don't think so, because I had it minus 900 on oxygen. But maybe it was reinstated too.
Okay. All the professional dues, those were minor increase, some of them were the same.
1,300?
Yep. Was that the same as last year?
Yep.
Okay, so it didn't change. They've been pretty good about that. Ammunition, the big change on that, I got 2,355 for this year. What was it last year,
Ooh.
18 or?
1690.
What happened was, is those were, the New York State bid contract price went up. This ammo company, they were, you know, they were so pleased to announce every year, oh yeah, we're still working off of 2006 rates or whatever it was. Well, last year they went up. And now that we have more officers, that's the change in the amount of ammo we need.
And that's
It's
mainly
nine-
just
nine
used for
millimeter?
training, right?
40 caliber.
40 caliber, 6 boxes, they come in a box of 50?
Yep.
So it's 6 boxes per officer.
Well, are you going off of the 300 rounds in their contract? And I've had officers come up and say, hey, I need 300 rounds. I don't just give it out openly like that. It's like, that's for training. So it's not just to throw to you so you can stockpile them.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go fire at a range or something, you know, I want proof that you went to the range.
We haven't actually used any rounds, right?
Not on people, but at training, yes.
Are these,
Deer.
are the rounds that they get, for training, are they?
There's two different.
Target
We can't-
rounds?
Yes,
Okay.
for the range, we use a lesser grade.
Yeah,
And it's full metal jacket.
okay,
For duty ammo, yeah, it's different.
yeah, okay.
So what
Because
is
there's
the
a
new
big difference
total
in the price.
for ammo?
2355.
And that's, I have no control over that, that's the state bid pricing, so. Radar and data master calibrations, that, again, I don't have enough data to really say, okay, am I tracking this right? I've never, a small increase on it, I think we're at 380 or something, what were we at last year, Troy?
Oh, it's 375 and then it's hard to read, it's light, it's looks
412?
like 412, yeah.
So that didn't change. 412 was last year's, or that was the year before?
The year before was 375,
And
last year was
412, so that didn't change it, because I just, like I said, I don't have enough data to say, okay, I'm in the ballpark, or office supplies, 2130, I think we only went up 10% on that. Chuck, what did we have for last year?
1986.
So I just put 10% on that. I really hard to track what the companies are gonna do with us, and other than good, over the last years, I'm not increasing it too much. Vehicle repairs. That went up just a little bit. I think we're at 13,000 and change last year, Joey?
13,200.
Two. Now, because the fleet is aging, I increase a little bit. We're pretty much on par right now. I want to say we're right around close to $9,000. And we are sending a car out tomorrow, so that might be a big, maybe an $800 hit, $1,000 hit. I'm not
So these
too
are
sure.
repairs outside of our mechanics in the
Yes.
village? Okay.
So,
what?
let's say the rear end went, like the car that got towed for the rear end going out. Could the mechanic have done that work? Probably, but in the middle of winter when he's passed out on other things, it is in the budget, and Kevin decided, you know, it would be quicker and more feasible just to send it out. And I don't know what all his capabilities are, so transmission blows, I don't know if he can fix that. If an engine blows,
No.
So,
Is it always, is there always an inquiry to the DPW before it gets sent out?
oh yeah, I don't make that call. I send that down to the DPW and
Oh, okay.
they assess it, yeah. So I just get the bill. And that also is the preventive maintenance stuff, you know, the tires, and we buy oil.
Well, I'm just saying that because right now, I don't think there's really a mechanism to transfer the costs of that to your department. So if you can get it done internally, let's keep some more money in your budget.
Absolutely, and my suggestion would be, I would love if we could do more in-house, but also with this figure, let's say we had a good year with maintenance and it was only $5,000. Would it be possible to take that extra and put it into the vehicle reserve fund?
Sure.
Okay, and I'd like to talk to you about that.
If you could demonstrate, I would say this, and again, it's, obviously the board has to make that call, but I would say if you could demonstrate to the board that you conserve those funds
Mhm.
by being more efficient in your repairs, it seems like a plausible
And same
argument.
thing, I'm trying to track with the data, and the more data I get, the better, and I'd love to be able to use that as a mechanism to get money into the vehicle reserves.
That'd be a reward for you.
Yeah, really.
See, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Incentive.
That's what we're trying to do, is set up the incentive for each department to do that.
Put that other item back on it? Not yet? Okay. So that's why there was a small increase with the vehicle maintenance.
And I'm not just saying, vehicles is a big piece, and that's easy to see when doing this. But some of your other big pieces are also, again, there's no reason why we can't set up a separate reserve fund for another area where we see you making the cuts and yet still providing top service. That's key. These are obviously numbers that have been generated throughout the last several years. Now I wanna see that $6,000 go to 2, with you still providing the same service, because it just wasn't tracked, it wasn't located. You just threw 600,000 in as a number. Now you can show us that you saved it, and then that money can go to one of the other items that we did cut, because we needed to. We can't pay for everything. The department had to do more due diligence, we'll have more in their
Yeah, sure.
funds.
Seems like
That's my
an
goal.
incentive makes sense.
Okay, the next item down is the fuel. Here's another one of those things, I don't know what the fuel prices are gonna do. I mean,
They're
something
going
can
down.
happen over the pond and it'll just throw it up. Yeah, I wish, so, this is absolute worst case scenario, and it's a little bit more than last year.
You keep saying a little bit, but then Charlie says, no,
Charlie's
that's
shaking
not
his
really
head
a
over there. Charlie,
qualifier.
where were we?
I'm
30?
waiting to
Well, we had 33 last year?
The number being thrown around is $3.50 a gallon for unleaded, and the diesel is probably $4.
And at 350 is what I budgeted for last year.
No, 375 is what
I thought we cut it back to 350.
Watch 'em.
Thank you, Charlie.
you should.
So the $4, can it be a too conservative of a price? I don't know. If I can actually
Could we give them that?
guesstimate that and project it accurately, I'd probably get into the stock
Calculator.
market.
The crazy thing is diesel fuel is so much cheaper to refine and it's more expensive, it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't understand that
It's,
much.
you know, it's just a,
I think it's gonna go up now since they have that problem with Russia.
Yeah.
Russia rates supplied,
So that's the reason why there was an increase there.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Everything at
was-
janitorial supplies, I wanna say was the same. Radio lease, no change. No change for the copier services. And that's all our other copiers. We get a guy that comes in, he does all the cleaning, maintenance, if we call him up on it. Impact computer maintenance. Now, this is split with communications, and I know with the previous treasurer, there was discussion at the last budget about consolidating them. I don't know why they're split up in two different ways. So and maybe we can work on that, and propose something to the board. I mean,
Well-
maybe there's a feasible reason why it is, but
well,
I'm just
right
thinking,
now, the way you have it budgeted, did you budget any of it to go against the dispatchers? In
Yeah, half
their
of it.
contractual, so half of it's in their contractual?
why it's set up that way, I don't know.
Well, it really is a matter of usage. Does dispatching use it as much as the police department does?
Yeah, it's
This
our,
this does what? What does this do?
this is our records management system. So there's a yearly cost to have them maintain that and give us the maintenance for
And
it.
the dispatchers go in there?
Oh yeah, that's those 1,500 incidents that you see that I give on a report, they're generating all those, and then we go in and follow up on what they started, or sometimes we start our own. So, yeah, they're constantly in that.
I just have, my question is, what's the added value to the dispatchers to charge them for that? You know, what are they, how does that
I don't know.
affect their functionality?
I mean, the bottom line is still going in the overall budget, but, I mean, I don't have a problem just moving it all over to one side of the house. Just food for thought for the future.
I don't, I really don't
I'm
have.
still trying to make
I
total
don't have a
sense
strong
of the way it's
position
broken
on
down.
it, because ultimately, when you want to charge other departments, it's because they're getting an added value out of it, like administrative costs, okay? The sewer department, the water department benefit from that. Police department does, but police department technically is in the A fund. You could split hairs and charge that cost to some degree against your budget, but as far as that item, I don't know, you know? I guess it's up to the board whether they feel strongly that it should be consolidated into.
Well, if there was a real concern about it, I mean, I don't see a disadvantage to moving it to one side of the house, but just so long as everybody knows that it is split up between the two.
Okay. We can consider that.
Okay.
No, that doesn't affect the numbers right now.
Well, it will affect the dispatcher's number will go down, the police department
Right.
number will go up. How much money are you talking?
It's 2,662 on this side. What did I throw the dispatchers away? Saying 50%.
So it's a total of almost $5,000. Yeah, I guess I don't know enough about how, my question would be, how does it impact the dispatchers as far as helping them do their job?
It's part of their everyday. That is the
Who
brains.
benefits from it, though?
We all do.
The dispatchers benefit from it?
It's the only way you can, they're our data entry team, so without them, as soon as they get a call or someone comes in, they're plugging everything in
If
the
it's part of their
computer.
function, I guess you could justify it.
Okay.
I don't care splitting it up there, my biggest thing is what we're paying for, that's the only reason why I wanna see things come together. This actually makes sense to split it up if both groups are using it.
They're both using them,
That doesn't
so
bother me.
whether it's 40 or
I'm
60.
trying to combine things to save money.
Right, so
This doesn't do that.
I just thought I'd
so
point that
that's-
out.
It's the cost.
Yeah, it's a matter of what the added value it gives to the individual
Exactly.
department.
Training, tuition, travel, conferences, Charlie, what number did we have on that, 2420? Or
Uh,
did it go up 10%?
No, it looks like 22
But went up 10%.
something.
That, I don't know if that'll go up, that's the training that I do if I go away. There again, I don't have enough real data to add or to take from it, but if there's gonna be an increase, 10%, just play it safe. Computer repairs, same thing, on the police side of the house, we increased that to 2,000. And that was from 1,600, Charlie,
Uh,
or 1,200?
It was 1650 in 2013.
Okay. So that jumped, the same, we have such an antique supply of computers, and it is starting to really run up our calling
How
for
many
it
computers
quite
you have?
often. I have 7 computers.